Hey everyone, this is our Module 2 presentation. We are reviewing an academic article, and the article is called Examining the Nature and Significance of Leadership in Government Organizations. Just a little bit of housekeeping. Our team consisted of 3 people: Drew Bissell, myself, Wayne Popelka, and Titania Russell. Alright, so with that out of the way, we're going to quickly go over our synopsis and a little bit of the background that led to the study. Our synopsis reading it is acknowledging that the study of organizational leadership in the public sector hasn't been as engrossing as the study of its private counterpart. The authors sought to add to the field's literature. To do so, they used the results from the Office of Personnel Management's 2002 Federal Human Capital Survey. The results of the survey represented at the time the largest data set capturing the opinions of federal employees. Using Bernard Bass's full-range leadership theory as the study's foundations, the authors sought to try and answer 3 questions. First, how inclusive is the operational definition of leadership in Bass's full-range theory? Second, how much of an impact do Bass's leadership competencies have on follower satisfaction? And third, how important is the transformational leadership compared to transactional leadership in government settings? All right, so a little bit of background. First, we got our authors. Tracy Trottier is an assistant professor in the School of Public and Environmental Affairs at Indiana University South Bend. She received her doctorate in public affairs from the University of Central Florida. Her research interests are leadership in public organizations, public management, organizational behavior, and community-based research. Montgomery Van Wart is a professor and chair at California State University, San Bernardino. As a scholar, he has more than 50 publications to his credit. His book on leadership, The Dynamics of Leadership Theory and Practice, was designated an outstanding academic title for 2005 by Choice. His recent books on leadership include a new textbook, Leadership in Public Organizations, an Introduction, and an edited volume, Administrative Leadership in the Public Sector. Xiaohu Wang teaches public administration courses at the University of Central Florida, specializing in performance management and financial management. He is also interested in methodological issues in public administration research. His recent book is titled Performance Analysis for Public and Nonprofit Organizations. So getting back to the study, these 3 authors saw that there was a gap in the academic literature at the time relating to transformational leadership. Back then, transformational leadership had been around about 20 years, but primarily it had been focused on the private sector. Up until then, nobody had really used it to examine the public sector. So to kind of try to address this, the authors got a hold of the Office of Personnel Management's 2002 Federal Human Capital Survey. At the time, this was the largest collection of federal employee opinions available. So to test the opinion data, the authors decided to use Benjamin Bass's full-range leadership theory and focus on 3 questions. Those questions were: first, how inclusive is the operational definition of leadership in Bass's full-range theory? Second, how much of an impact do Bass's leadership competencies have on follower satisfaction? And third, how important is the transformational leadership compared to transactional leadership in government settings? So if everything is going right, that is going to be the extent of our background, and I'm going to be handing it over to Titania. She will take it from here. Thank you.
Bernard Bass' theory on leadership talks about the different styles of leadership skills and what styles can be more effective in a government organization. He talks about a leader should have a mixture of skills to be a good leader. 2 of the leadership skills that Bass talks about are transactional leaders and transformational leadership. Transformational leadership is a leadership style that can inspire positive change. These types of leaders are passionate and they are concerned about helping others and encourage the growth of everyone in the organization. Transactional leaders is a leadership style where the leader values order and structure and just focus on the end results. These leaders work best with people who know how to do their job. When Bass talked about these 2 leadership styles, he also talked about 8 tenets that falls under them. So the 4 tenets that fall under transformational leadership is is intellect stimulation. The leader not only challenge the status, they also encourage creativity among employees and encourage others to explore a new way of doing things. Individualized consideration. The leaders offer support and encouragement to individuals. This is to help foster support those relationships and to keep the line of communication open. Inspirational motivation. Leaders have a clear vision on how to communicate with others. They're also able to help others have the same passion and vision to fulfill those goals. Idealized influence. Leader becomes a role model for others. This happens when the leader is able to gain the trust and respect from their employees. The four components that fall under transactional leadership is contingent awards. This is an award system that is linked to the employee's performance. So the employee can receive monetary an award, or they can receive time award, or they can receive something to help them complete a different task or help them be able to work better. And what I mean by to work better is, say like if the employee has a situation where they have a back problem and the chair now that is not suitable for them, they will go to their employer and say, okay, in order for me to complete this task, I'm going to need a better chair to assist me. And the employer would provide the employee with the chair so to be able to complete their task and be successful in what they're doing. Another reward system is time off. It's like when an employee worked hard on a particular task, their employee will be rewarded with maybe an extra vacation day. Active management by exception monitors the work of their subordinates, taking corrective action to prevent mistakes. So this is when the employer might just double check the employee's work to make sure everything is correct. Passive management by exception. The leader intervenes only when standards are not met or when the performance is not per expectation. So this is the employer stepping back, and only when the employee needs help will they step in to see what needs to be done to get the employee performing back up to their expectation. Laissez-faire is when subordinates get to make the decisions. A leader avoids decision, therefore the group lacks direction. So this is when the employer or the leader will have the staff make the decisions on what needs to be done on a particular project and not provide any direction to them on how they want it done or how it should be done. What I learned from Bass during this the article that I read is that you do need a little bit of all 8 tenths to be an effective leader. I do believe in rewarding employees for doing a good job. If it's beyond their expectation, yes, they do need to be rewarded. You do need to be a role model for the employees. The employees need to be able to look up to you and come to you if there's a situation that they need help with. Communications needs to be always open between a leader and their subordinates. So subordinates needs to come to a leader for any reason that they need if they have any particular hard time doing a certain task. So I did enjoy reading Bernard Bass' article on leadership, and it did help me grow. It did let me know that some stuff that I might need to work on in order to be an effective leader.
Study methodology, Drew Bissell. In 2002, the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, OPM, conducted the Federal Human Capital Survey, and that was to assess the presence and extent of conditions that characterize high-performance organizations. And to do this, they distributed the survey to 424 employees, and all these employees worked in the executive branch of federal government, both in the U.S. and abroad. 51% response rate was found, with 106,742 surveys being returned, and of that, only about 100,000 of them were considered usable for the analysis study. Questions in the survey covered very large variety of issues and demographics. Questions included strategic alignment, strategic competencies, which is kind of like talent, leadership, performance culture, learning, and the management of knowledge, personal experiences, job satisfaction, compensation and benefits, and family flexibilities. And demographics included the agency the respondents worked for, the subunit that they were in the agency, supervisory status, gender, race. To measure everything, the survey included 118 individual questions or items. The survey addresses organizational performance, leadership, and employment satisfaction. To do this, they measured 6 leadership dimensions, along with perceived leadership effectiveness and follower satisfaction. 6 dimensions are management by expectation or exception, contingent reward, individualized consideration, idealized influence, inspirational motivation, and intellectual stimulation. And it also measured transactional and transformational leadership behaviors as set forth by Bass himself. 2 items used to measure perceived leadership effectiveness, and those were, quote, I hold my organization's leader in high regard, and, quote, overall, how good a job do you feel is being done by your immediate supervisor or leader? A big ticket item here was that follower satisfaction is a direct outcome of leadership. And it was operationalized to include 3 dimensions of a follower satisfaction: satisfaction with the job, satisfaction with the organization, and recommendation for others. 3 things were used in measurement, and those were considering everything, how satisfied are you with the job? Considering everything, how would you rate your overall satisfaction in your organization at present time? And would you recommend the organization as a good place to work? And then some key demographics used for measurement were more of a control in this experiment or in this study, examining the impact of leadership satisfaction. Measurements included gender, ethnicity, and what I find to be very interesting and cool is how the respondent felt about their organization's dimensions that influenced follower satisfaction, such as pay, benefits, career path, personal fulfillment of their jobs, physical working conditions they had, organizational training, workplace flexibilities, their coworkers, and just the communications as an overall team.
Findings. Let's look a little bit at what the study found. The first research question was, how inclusive is the operational definition of leadership in Bass's full range theory? The authors found it to be rather high, right around the 70th percentile. 2 things that stuck out to me that I just want to include here very quickly is that while this is high, Bass actually predicted that it was going to be even higher. And the other thing was that the study made the point of comparing these results to Kouzes and Posner's 1987 study that looked at 10 leadership practices using a critical incident methodology. And that just stuck out to me because those names seemed very familiar, and that is because they're actually the authors of the Leadership Challenge, which we're reading for this course. Okay, next research question is, how much of an impact do Bass's leadership competencies have on follower satisfaction? So to get a sense of that, I copied this table out of the study and put it here. So to look at the table and kind of get a sense of what's going on, you're going to want to focus on this column right here, standardized coefficients. What those are going to do is tell us how important each of the factors are relative to an employee's satisfaction. So looking at it clearly, personal fulfillment of job stands clear and above everything else. Something that's interesting that we can look at together is the fact that the next 3 are virtually tied, and that is inspirational motivation, individualized consideration, and idealized influence. Finally, the last research question is, how important is transformational leadership compared to transactional leadership in government settings? So respondents graded transformational leadership as slightly more important. So the three transformational variables accounted for 70.9% of the variance of perceived leadership effectiveness. Meanwhile, the transactional variables accounted for just 65% of that. But there's a little more to it than just that. So even though respondents graded transformational leadership as more important, they rated management higher in the transactional leadership factors than they do in the transformational ones. This may be due to federal leaders scoring low in their ability to instill enthusiasm and a sense of empowerment in their workforce. That's an attribute that's strongly associated with transformational leadership. So there you go. I have like a moment of clarity or anything like that where something just grabbed me and I thought, oh wow, this changes how I look at leadership in the public sector. A lot of it makes sense to me. It makes sense to me that a model of leadership that allows someone to pick and choose from all the other styles of leadership is going to resonate. I just keep coming back to this idea that it makes sense. It makes sense to me that federal managers would have difficulty with inspirational motivation due to having to conform to the bureaucracy. It makes sense to me that federal leaders are going to tend to favor transactional leadership over transformational for the same reasons, the bureaucracy. The other thing I want to just touch on a little bit was reading this. The thing that really grabbed me was just this whole transformational versus transactional thing, and how it just reminded me so much of the Friedrich Feiner debate that you learn about in public administration. That, in a nutshell, is Friedrich argues for the autonomy of civil servants in carrying out their mandates. Meanwhile, Feiner's position is that the work of civil service should be closely monitored by the electorate and absent of decision-making powers. And his reasoning for that is just that the civil service isn't elected by the public. Our elected officials are elected by the public, and that's who's being entrusted to make decisions on behalf of the public. So it shouldn't be left to the civil servants. Anyways, the two arguments, I just see a lot of similarities just between the whole Friedrich's argument and transformational leadership sort of being the freedom side of it versus Feiner's counter argument and transactional leadership sort of being all about restriction. So there you go.
A few things I found to be really important or interesting that I think I will be incorporating to my own leadership styles. One important thing was follower satisfaction, something I hold with high regard anyway, but the text commonly referred to it, so I thought it was important to at least include it. And I thought it was so important because it so commonly referred to as having excellent outcomes in the text between leader and followers and just the operations they go through in their day-to-day business. I was also very interested by the differences between transformational and transactional leadership styles. Personally, I never quite understood or even knew that there was a difference between the two, at least as far as separating them and giving them a term goes. In my own head, I never really saw transactional leadership as being quite useful, but like Titania was saying, this style of leadership can be very useful for an organization where the followers are really good at their jobs anyway. So having a leader there with you in this transformational way may not be as necessary. And I never thought of it like that. So my mind is now open to this difference, and I do find it to be very important, especially in the public sector where people are generally should at least know more of what they're doing in their day-to-day lives, at work rather. Titania covered her takeaways in her slides above. And there's the end and a few sources.